Welcome to the latest edition of the Moor Intelligence podcast. I'm Roland Main and I'm joined today by David Tomasi, who's Head of Energy, Mining and Renewables for Moor Global. David, your group's produced a very interesting report that makes sobering reading about the ability of business to meet emissions targets set for 2050. What are your main concerns?
Well, thanks, Roland. Yes, I think there's definitely an inconvenient truth around the world's journey towards sustainability. And, we need to transition, or the world needs to transition from the traditional energy sources and the way we go about mining if we hope to meet the targets that are set around net zero emissions by 2050. And one of the main focuses of our white paper is around every day that we delay makes that task just that little bit harder. And we need to stop talking about it and actually start introducing some practical steps.
Can you give us some examples of some of those practical steps that you think can be taken now to reduce emissions in the foreseeable future?
Well, yes, I mean, our white paper does outline a number. One is to use LNG as a marine fuel, for instance. We think that has a lot of merit because it can help, LNG as a marine fuel will reduce carbon emissions by up to 30%. And that technology is here today. To look at maybe the electrification of the mining processes that we have to improve that process and not to rely as much on diesel generation, particularly on the more remote mine sites. To improve the infrastructure around the support of electric vehicles, and that infrastructure is really around the charging infrastructure and the power generation that then goes into those electric vehicles. And maybe also, slightly controversially, I think, we sort of raise taking a fresh look at nuclear and how that might impact the world, given that that is a proven technology at the moment. We understand there's certain other considerations for nuclear, but it is much safer than certainly it was back in the 60s through to the 80s.
I think your views about LNG are very interesting. However, many people might say that we should be investing in hydrogen, which creates zero emissions. What do you say to that?
Well, I think one of the things that we should remember is that, for instance, an LNG, we're proposing that we understand that is a fossil fuel, but one of the reasons we propose it in the shipping space is that what people don't know is that shipping is currently responsible for almost 3% of all global CO2 emissions, and that in itself, if shipping was a country, it would be the sixth largest emitter in the world. And I think what we're saying with hydrogen in the shipping space is it's not in a position to be commercially viable at this present time to actually power the world shipping. It's just not able to be produced in a condensed enough version to be able to make it viable on the ships. And LNG is here now, and it is something that we can use to help us transition to that point when hydrogen does become commercially viable through the being embedded in ammonia. And LNG and the ammonia process does have some connectivity down the track once the technology catches up.
Now, some people might say that we should be a bit more positive. The ability of technology to evolve and help us solve these problems. What do you say to that?
Well, look, we are great believers in the fact, and me personally, that we, as a human race, we do tend to adapt very well. And I think history has shown that when we're faced with a problem or a crisis, we are able to find a solution. And quite often we surprise ourselves and we can tackle really difficult problems and get an answer much quicker than we originally think. But it's not to say that in itself, waiting for that has its limitations, because are we waiting for the silver bullet? What can we do in the meantime that helps us get there, to reduce that, start to make a contribution towards reducing emissions and helping hit our targets along the way to net zero in 2050, to help us hit our targets by 2030 that we're expected to hit. If we sit around waiting for the silver bullet, we haven't started to make any progress. And as I said earlier, every day we delay makes that task just that little bit more difficult.
David Tomasi, thank you very much.